In October this year, a luxury cruise ship named Riviera, operated by a U.S. cruise company, suddenly changed its original route after leaving the waters off Japan's Honshu. Instead of docking at its planned stop in a Chinese port, it bypassed China entirely and sailed directly to Busan, South Korea. At the time, the ship was carrying about 1,250 passengers, and according to its original schedule, it was supposed to dock at Shanghai port on October 15th. The reason behind this unexpected change was that China had officially implemented a new port policy the day before. Under the new regulation, if the ship continued to dock in Shanghai, it would have to pay a port fee of up to $1.6 million. As a result, the cruise company was forced to alter its route. This sudden change left many passengers feeling dissatisfied. China, however, responded by saying that this measure was a reciprocal counteraction against the U.S. Section 301 investigation. So, why would American cruise ships have to pay such a high fee to dock at Chinese ports? And what exactly is the U.S. 301 investigation against China? If you like our video content, please click to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can receive all our latest video content. Now, let's get into today's topic. We all know that ever since Donald Trump took office, he has treated tariffs as a weapon, launching a trade war across the globe without firing a single shot. By using tariffs as leverage, he has repeatedly pressured other countries in an attempt to secure trade advantages for the United States. Among all these sanctions, China has undoubtedly been one of his primary targets. At first, the U.S. imposed an additional 10% tariff on Chinese goods, which was later abruptly raised to 125%, although both sides reached a temporary truce agreement on May 12th this year. That agreement was only valid until November 1st, after which tariffs would return to 100%. However, following the talks held in Kuala Lumpur on October 26th, the U.S. announced that it would no longer consider imposing those additional tariffs on China. Still, it's important to note that U.S. sanctions against China currently include what's known as a Section 301 investigation, which specifically targets China's shipping and shipbuilding industries. Many people might not be familiar with the 301 investigation. It actually refers to Section 301 of the U.S. Trade Act of 1974, originally designed to take action, such as imposing tariffs or export restrictions against countries deemed to engage in unfair trade practices. For China, known as the world's factory, maritime shipping has long been a crucial lifeline for maintaining economic operations, ensuring energy security, and connecting global supply chains. At present, China has established shipping routes with over 700 ports in more than 200 countries and regions around the world. Every day, more than 80,000 container ships operated by Chinese companies are active, and vessels departing from Chinese ports can reach virtually every major trade region. In 2024 alone, China's seaborne exports accounted for 31% of the world's total maritime cargo volume. It is precisely because of this heavy reliance on maritime transport that the United States has repeatedly used the 301 investigation to target China's shipping sector, and this is far from the first time. As early as August 2017, Donald Trump launched the first Section 301 investigation against China. Starting in 2018, the United States gradually imposed tariffs on Chinese goods worth a total of about $370 billion. Given that roughly 95% of trade between China and the U.S. depends on maritime transport, these measures had a clear impact on China. Some Chinese container ships arriving at U.S. ports were deliberately subjected to customs clearance delays or secondary inspections, extending their docking time and increasing storage costs. At the same time, there were also hidden barriers such as order restrictions targeting Chinese shipping companies. In addition, the U.S. placed several subsidiaries of the China COSCO Shipping Corporation on its procurement blacklist and required Chinese-made machinery and equipment to provide extra compliance documentation and undergo stricter inspection procedures. During Trump's second term, In February 2025, he re-signed and reactivated the Section 301 investigation provisions, imposing additional tariffs ranging from 10% to 125% on Chinese goods, and introducing an extra port entry fee for vessels made in China or linked to Chinese ownership. Once the policy took effect, many U.S. companies almost completely stopped placing orders with Chinese shipyards. The share of orders from Japan, South Korea, and Europe to Chinese shipbuilders dropped from around 15% to less than 5%, causing a large number of high-profit orders to flow to other markets. Notably, the 301 investigation also restricted several Chinese shipyards from purchasing U.S.-made equipment and materials, forcing some shipbuilding projects to extend their construction schedules by 3 to 6 months. However, China did not simply stand by. In response to the impact of the 301 investigation, many Chinese companies began collectively avoiding U.S. ports and adjusting their shipping routes. Since May 2025, U.S. imports from China have fallen by 20.8% compared with April, dropping to 637,000 TEUs, the sharpest monthly decline since March 2020. For the top 10 U.S. ports, overall import volumes have also shown a noticeable decrease. To further counter the Section 301 investigation, China announced a retaliatory measure this October. Starting from October 14th, China began imposing a special port fee on qualifying vessels, calculated based on each voyage and tonnage. The following categories of ships are subject to this fee: vessels owned by U.S. companies, operated by U.S. companies, vessels in which U.S. entities hold a direct or indirect ownership stake of 25% or more, ships flying the U.S. flag, ships built in the United States or by U.S. shipbuilders, and vessels owned by companies whose chairman is an American citizen. The fee rate, effective from October 14th, 2025, is $56 per ton, and it will increase annually until reaching $157 per ton by April 17th, 2028. However, China's policy includes certain exemptions. Ships built in China or vessels entering Chinese shipyard for maintenance, while unladen, are exempt from paying the fee. Interestingly, right after the regulation was introduced, several shipping companies with American chairmen began taking evasive actions, prompting their chairman to resign in order to bypass the policy restrictions. For instance, the U.S.-listed tanker company Okeanis Eco Tankers announced on October 13th that two of its board members, Robert Knapp and Joshua Nimser, had decided to resign. Although the company described this as a personnel adjustment, the timing, just 3 days before the policy took effect, inevitably sparked public speculation. However, the impact extended far beyond just one company. The Manuka, a container ship operated by the U.S. Maersk Group, was originally scheduled to arrive at Ningbo port on October 13th to unload cargo. Yet just 1 day later, before unloading was even completed, the vessel received an invoice from Ningbo port demanding payment of the special port fee. Based on the tonnage-based calculation, the Manuka was required to pay nearly $630,000, making it the first ship to be charged under the new regulation. According to industry estimates, this fee alone amounts to roughly half the vessel's total charter cost. Aside from ships like the Manuka that had already docked before the policy took effect, other shipping companies quickly began adjusting their routes to avoid potential losses once the news broke. For example, the Riviera, a luxury cruise ship operated by an American cruise company, was originally scheduled to dock in Shanghai. However, when it was just 48 nautical miles from the Honshu River terminal, it suddenly changed course and headed for Busan, South Korea. This last-minute decision sparked dissatisfaction and complaints from passengers on board. According to estimates, if the Riviera had docked in Shanghai as planned, it would have faced a port fee of up to $1.64 million. To put that into perspective, the company's original plan was to dock in Shanghai 5 times a year, meaning port fees alone would total $8.2 million, roughly 8 times the net profit from a single cruise route. Some might ask, cruise ships can change destinations, but what about container ships carrying cargo? In fact, as early as October 10th, 2 U.S. flag container ships operated by Maersk were scheduled to dock at Ningbo port. Upon learning of the policy change, they decided to cancel their calls and instead unload cargo in South Korea, transporting the goods to China by land or other means. Similarly, the Potomac Express, a U.S.-registered container ship operated by Germany's Hapag-Lloyd, also canceled its planned stop in Ningbo and diverted to Busan for unloading. It's important to note that container ship unloading plans are typically calculated with great precision based on route costs and efficiency. A last-minute route change not only increases transit time, but also significantly raises transportation expenses. If U.S. exporters respond by temporarily raising product prices to offset these added costs, Chinese importers could easily refuse transactions on the grounds of price changes. In other words, the additional expenses caused by rerouting are, in most cases, ultimately borne by the U.S. exporters or the shipping companies themselves. But it's worth noting that on October 16th, the Spectrum of the Seas, a cruise ship operated by Royal Caribbean, did not pay a single cent in special port fees. Although the company is registered, owned, and managed in the United States, the ship itself is registered in the Bahamas, flies the Bahamian flag, and was built in Germany. According to China's policy and the exemption clause in Article 6, a vessel that meets only part of the specified conditions may be exempted from the fee if it was built in China, primarily serves Chinese passengers, and is not involved in U.S. freight interests or government transportation contracts, subject to official approval. On October 16th, after review and discussion by the relevant Chinese authorities, it was determined that more than 95% of the passengers aboard the Spectrum of the Seas were Chinese citizens, and that the voyage was part of a commercial tourism program targeting the Chinese market. Therefore, the ship was granted an exemption from the special port fee. Since the Section 301 investigation was introduced, the U.S. approach has, in fact, inflicted considerable damage on itself while targeting other countries. In 2024, approximately 14,300 Chinese vessels visited U.S. ports, accounting for about 18% of total port calls in the United States. However, after Trump's 301 investigation took effect, the number of Chinese-built container ships docking at the Port of Oakland fell by 83%, and at the Port of Los Angeles by around 71%. Estimates suggest that within the first year of the policy's implementation, U.S. ports suffered direct and indirect losses of roughly $3 billion. Meanwhile, the prices of goods imported from China rose sharply, initially absorbed by shipping companies, but ultimately passed on to consumers. In addition, as fewer vessels called at U.S. ports, employment opportunities in port operations also declined. Over time, this could lead to more people losing their jobs, and in some cases, even force certain ports to suspend operations altogether. In my view, there are no real winners in this struggle. The ones who suffer the most are the business owners and ordinary citizens of both countries. To not miss out on our future projects and news updates, please make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We will continue to provide you with more exciting and interesting content.